All right, well, we'll start the stream.
It's going good.
Jonah, I brought a Belgian by the same people that make that tropical Belgian.
Oh, yeah, sounds great. Yeah.
It's been so long since we've seen
I started rewatching it.
that. Wow, that's short. Season 1. Yeah, that's what's gonna happen. And I wanted to watch the Breaking or the Better Call Saul.
Oh yeah, that's so good.
Better Call Saul is amazing, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, definitely.
It's crazy. Holy shit. Okay. You want to go? Sure. I'll take one. White glass.
All right.
I mean, every single time I go for a walk on Monday, I see one of y'all.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right. I just started streaming, so for the kind of getting ready stream.
Oh yeah.
The prelim
stream.
Yeah, the
The
prelim
atmosphere.
stream.
Jenny, what's up with the avocado?
That's a way to keep it fresh. If you put it in it and then put it in a bowl of water, then when you take it out, it's super great.
What? Doesn't oxidize.
You want to hear a disclosure I got from an alien intelligence a few years ago about something similar?
Yeah.
It was it might be serious in origin because it beamed. I didn't know about Sirius yet, but it beamed into my awareness from a star, and it was a dog with the face of a human being. And when it left, it bit me on the right nipple, and then later I did some research and found out that the star Sirius is associated with the right nipple.
And Sirius is
So
bigger
this-
than the dog, too.
Yeah.
Right. So this is why I give it credence. But anyway, it said in order to not interfere with the communication of whales and dolphins, what you can do is when you're asleep, take dilute avocado oil in water and spray it around your room.
Whoa.
And you won't interfere with those. Isn't that weird?
Yeah. I love it.
I was just talking to friends about I've had some friends who were deep into the ketamine dolphin dimension.
Oh, well, yeah, John C. Lilly shed.
I think so,
What's
yeah.
up with that?
And I don't know, I was just like, one of my friends was very much in a heightened state for like weeks at a time. But that was like his whole trip, was just like dolphin communication through ketamine use.
Well, you know about Ra's experience with the dolphins. I mean,
No.
well, not with dolphins per se, but so Ra was good friends with John Lilly, who was the guy who experimented with ketamine on dolphins. He was in Ibiza. And that's where Ra met him, and Ra actually did inject ketamine. In fact, he claimed to have injected it in every meridian point on his body, including yeah. Yes, every point in his body. He claimed to have, this is before his encounter with this. This is before, so...
He might have primed himself for the voice by doing that.
But his first time doing ketamine, well, yeah, his first time doing ketamine was one of the first times humans did ketamine, because this was early ketamine research. And John Lilly wouldn't give something to his dolphins when he wouldn't try it himself.
Mm-hmm.
So he and Ra did it together. And Ra's first experience doing it, shooting it out, was actually afterwards. So he saw God. So rather than an atheist his whole life, never had any experience of God. In his first ketamine experience, he finished it not believing in God. He said he experienced God, and God was a smell, and smelled like compressed intelligence.
Oh, wow.
So that was his first experience.
Wild.
Yeah. So anyway,
Maybe a can of
happy
that.
adventuring. Yeah.
Kind of like compressed intelligence.
Yeah, a can of compressed intelligence. Well, let's get a couple other streams ready. We're still waiting for C, and the topic today is Neptune. Just doing
Okay.
Neptune. That's it. Only Neptune.
All
So,
right, let's go.
In celebration.
I was literally going to research Neptune today just because I just wanted to get more familiar with it before I talk about 36 in it. I
yeah.
wanted to talk about that.
Well, and I was first thinking, should we do Neptune Pluto formula, like the planet stuff? And I was listening to Neptune. I mean, if people want to look at their Plutos too, they can. But
Is there a connection between the two that's
it's
specific?
just that there's a formula where you look at the Neptune, and that's the false truth, or like the false purpose. So everyone kind of thinks their real purpose in life is their Neptune. Maybe that would be the personality Neptune more specifically, or maybe there's two false purposes that we get trapped in some cases.
Mhm.
My Neptunes are the same, and a lot of people's are.
Yeah.
But people born today, they're not going to be the same over the next couple months
Yeah.
because there is that overlap. So, but with Neptune, it's seen as it's part of the horizontals and verticals with Magic Square, so it kind of colludes with Venus and Jupiter and Mercury to keep us locked in the not self. If you think of the not self planets, it's Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Neptune. Because the not self loves to talk, Mercury, and it loves pleasant things, Venus, and it wants to expand and fill up everything, Jupiter, and it loves escapism and avoiding truth and Maya and all this. And so,
And theater
there's-
and entertainment.
yeah, and there's going to be a lot of good sides to it too. I don't mean to only talk smack, and we'll see. I was saying before when Neptune first transited 22 and then left 22, how I felt so lucky that I knew human design before Neptune transited. Hey, welcome! The legendary C. Alex Clark arrives.
It's, we're all
All
I'm
right.
Taylor. Good to meet you.
May I take a short? Okay.
Just the
Well,
plant corner.
Is that okay for you?
Well, let's get the other streams going. Let's get the Instagrams going. The grams.
All right.
The grams, right? I think so. I think that's the thing to do. And
People have come to expect it.
yeah,
And I can repost it.
you do something once, and then people you do it every time. So
So, Joni, my theory about the rotational element of the magic square?
no, I haven't
How
heard
it's not only Pluto that's antidote to Neptune, but everything that is rotationally clockwise from the standard planet is the sort of compensation for it. So
Okay.
Uranus as compensation to Mercury,
Yep.
Moon as compensation to Venus,
Okay.
and what else?
Mars and Jupiter.
No, Mars is in
Oh yeah,
Saturn
Saturn
is
and
compensation
Saturn and
to
Jupiter.
Jupiter.
Yeah, well that makes sense. Saturn is the response.
Care more about
Jupiter, yeah.
care more about the punishment. of the
For
law.
those who didn't, for those who missed that, and we'll say that again once we get the live stream going on Instagram. Some people have had a hard time hearing through YouTube, and if you do, just tune in on Instagram. It's going to be. You want to do everyone stuff?
Yeah, sure.
So we're going to be on every __ sorry, the one _ is _ different. Everyone is different, and we're also going to be streaming on High Desert Human Design. And I don't know if I need to stream on mine too. I mean, you probably don't need 3, but I mean, whatever. I'll do it. We'll see. Let's get it set up and. Okay, might as well. Does that gonna work?
No, I think I missed it.
No, that doesn't work. Okay. Oh, you do it that way, not with the front, huh? But then we can't see the comments.
Okay.
Well, no, I mean that's fine too,
No,
though.
you're right. That makes more sense.
Okay. All right. Are we live? All right. Welcome. So yeah, we'll just take a minute to.
Double lives.
Yeah. You can go live on yours if you want to. I mean, we can all go live.
I think I'm gonna share it.
Well, you can share it, but you can also go live, and then people will go back to your page to watch. And, I mean, that's fine. Like, the more the merrier, honestly. You have to tune into different ones to hear what people say, because we're all so far away. That
What's the other one?
this is the #1 complaint. This is just on my site. I just figured I have a lot of people that don't follow other accounts.
Can I take a picture?
Yeah,
of you?
absolutely. Please.
Oh yeah.
Oh wait.
Did that work?
And you're a blurred, closed face, so I won't use that one. Your eyes are closed.
Please.
Yeah, well, I'm not doing it this way.
Oh.
So done. Everything I do, mistake. Hold on.
See if you want to start waving to people. Hello, Amarasibra. Hello, Raylan.
Oh,
Hello,
I'm
Mark
thinking-
Mary. Oh, you're waving in real life. Jocko! Oh my god. Hello, Jocko. We're just getting set up and then we'll do a little, we'll get started in a moment.
Jocko's watching.
Yeah, Jocko's watching.
Jocko,
Is this
come
one? Is this one live?
Huh? That one should be live, isn't
Are
it?
you sure? I don't know. There's
Press it again.
I don't know what's going on.
TV not in.
Hello. Bruh, says Jocko. Beatrice, mind, body, Soul Aligned, welcome. I want to play Elden Ring as Jocko's comment. Yeah, I mean, you can
So
let
just
yourself
chatting
in.
about Neptune, it's the main thing.
Yeah, we are talking about Neptune, and actually that's pretty perfect.
That's pretty old.
The representative of Neptune. Well, yeah, yeah, Elden Ring. Hello, Liliana, welcome. Hello, friends, Raylan. Hi. Jocko, you can just go. You should come here because you're like half a mile away, so you can be in this video right now. But if you don't, you can just let yourself in to my house and play Elden Ring. Just know that I'll be home around 8:30 or 9, and I expect it to be clean and no, I'm joking. So, hello.
All right.
We're gonna
Yeah.
talk
So
about the launch day of Elden Ring and what Neptune was training, right?
That was the same day that war in Ukraine started.
Oh, great.
Literally.
oh my word, that's funny.
Coincidence.
So the topic today is Neptune, if people haven't guessed yet, and we will be talking about Neptune shortly. We're just still kind of getting settled. What?
I said confused.
What if we turn the cameras to face each other?
I'll point one camera at the other to get an infinite loopy Neptune frame within a frame.
There we go. This is our little Neptune.
Not so exciting
Oh.
if you do this.
Oh. Okay, but that's only from our view. They can't see. Oh no, wait. These people can see it.
These people.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We really are starting soon. I swear.
The camera trick.
Hello, Easy. Hola.
Does everyone know what they're watching? Does everyone know what they're watching?
Yeah, we are watching Human Design Catalyst number 7 for year 3. So year 3, number 7. We're probably like number 100 something right now. We've got to be.
Yeah.
But we started over because we lost count, and so now we're back at number 7 for this year.
It's just more trackable anyway.
Yeah.
I like
Unveil it. Yeah. What are we doing? So unveil. Well, Neptune. Not much is going to be unveiled when we're talking about Neptune. Neptune Exposed. That's the title. So so just a couple things to get started. What we were just kind of talking about. There's so much to go into. It is going to be very casual. We're always going to kind of talk about interesting things that we think up in the moment. But one thing Mike pointed out is that if you study the magic square, he was saying, so it's kind of a formula that Pluto is to the true self what Neptune is to the not self. That Pluto is the antidote, if you will, that was the word you used, to Neptune. And what Mike was saying is that actually if you follow the magic square, you also see Uranus as the antidote to Mercury. You see Saturn to Jupiter. You see Moon to Venus, and you see Saturn to Jupiter.
What's the magic square? I don't know if I've ever heard that.
So the magic square is a configuration of the planets where you have the Moon in the corner and Mars in the middle, and then there's the horizontals and the diagonals. And the horizontal, vertical, the kind of the cross, and then there's the diagonal.
When you get in printed out on the Maya mechanics, it shows that.
Welcome, come see.
Yeah,
Welcome,
it's like the
Lee.
grid.
Yeah.
Welcome,
That's
Monist. Yeah, so it's the square that's actually in Maya mechanics, and it's a few other places. And the order of the planets is significant, and there's some interesting magic square analysis you can do. For instance, color resonance analysis is very fascinating. If you, in fact, Mike made this great meme about it. You just go on his Instagram, High Desert Human Design, and you'll find it. But it's, let's show the people at home too, if you have a graphic. Okay. So this is going to be, these are kind of the order of the planets, and
When
you'll
you
see
advance,
that Mars is right in the middle, and Moon is in the corner, and so on. And so we have,
Do you do the advanced imaging?
the advanced
Yeah,
imaging
yeah.
turns it on. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so one of the interesting things with Magic Square, just to give a little context, and then we can talk about where Neptune plays a part. One of the interesting things is that in conventional astrology and for the not-self, we're always kind of stuck in, or I guess you could say the patron saints of the homogenized world are Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Neptune. Mercury, we all love to talk. The not-self loves to talk. You start to mutate into human design, suddenly you have nothing to say. Suddenly there's nothing. We have a lot to say, but after we've recovered from multiple years of having nothing to say. Because there's a point where you get into human design where you just go, okay, I'm leaving behind the mercurial world for something else. I'm leaving behind the world of news and gossip for something else. And that's his first step. And what you're saying is that actually that's the step to Uranus, to the sidetrack, which is part of the diagonal. So what's interesting is the horizontals and verticals, they make a grid in the middle. I'm talking about the vertical column, the horizontal column, ignoring Mars in the middle. They make, so that's the Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Neptune. When you look at the corners and you look at the diagonals now, and we also have Moon, but that's kind of a special case, Mars belongs to the diagonal weirdly, but Mars is, because it has the keynote of mutation, that immature energy that we usually experience in Mars is also the heating agent in the alchemical process that ultimately leads to the mutation. So Mars, which is considered the lesser malefic in conventional astrology, takes on this great quality of human design. So does Saturn, so does Uranus, and so does Pluto. So Mars, Saturn, Uranus, Pluto are the planets of human design.
And Moon.
Well, Moon too, yeah. But the Moon kind of shares with both. The Moon is the focus always. And yeah, and Ra does kind of say that Mars is almost replaces the Moon in the diagonal in that sense. He calls them the diagonal, but Mars is actually the
I've never heard about any of this.
Ra did a lot of like one-offs. He would do some like weird stuff, and he would get deep into some territory and just do like a one-off on it. But so was Mike. Mike came up. I never heard anyone else talk about when you follow the rotation. It makes sense, but to extrapolate that Pluto is sort of the cure for Neptune. That Neptune puts you in illusion, and Pluto is the real truth behind that.
Yeah.
But then to extrapolate from that, Venus puts you in the pleasantries, and which one is after Venus? Moon. Yeah. So Moon must pull you out of that somehow. Or unless Mars swaps it out there too. Mars might be a swapping point in that position.
I always thought that Mars was the one that was sort of amphibious and was involved in both the conditioning and in the.
It is both in that sense, but the Moon remains the focal point and always has a special color given to it, no matter what. It's kind of like outside of them. So if you'll see, it depends how you do it. But in Maya mechanics, usually we'll do.
On that one.
So that one is not really. Oh, it is special. Yeah, the Moon is given a special.
Yeah, it's got
a
colors,
special
different
highlight.
colors.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
special highlight to show that really it's not much part of it. So anyway, this is just how we got on this, is talking about what is the role of Neptune. Now, there's a very different role of Neptune for when you're living your design and when you're not, obviously. And I don't want to say that because Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Neptune are not self-planets, that suddenly you write them off when you're into human design or something. It's not that at all. It's more like what Edward F. Edinger says in his great book, Anatomy of the Psyche. It's in the Solutio chapter where he talks about the water. It's very Neptunian. And he talks about how there's a certain point in the individuation process where the escapism of being underwater is no longer appealing. Where you're no longer dreaming of the orgies, you're no longer dreaming of the endless pleasure, you're no longer dreaming of the intoxication. That is actually terrifying to you because it comes to signify the regressive pull back into unconsciousness, back into ignorance, back into sleep. And you want to wake up, So it's interesting. So Edinger does kind of identify, I guess we could call it the negative Neptune, at least negative insofar as it is palliative and helps you feel better so you don't really have to change anything and grow and mutate and go through all that pain. So it's obviously every planet is going to carry, they're so multivalent, they carry so many values, we don't introduce them, which is why I was saying last time Neptune transited 22, because Neptune left 22 yesterday, it's now at 36. The Sun entered 22 a few hours later. Yeah, I love when there are these like lockstep
It's like,
programming.
what kind of joke is that?
And you were just saying,
It was
Jenny,
nice to see the difference.
Yeah, you were saying.
Oh, well, I was just kind of observing the difference of how today, like, I could feel that, like, it kind of come back in, but it felt much cleaner. Like, where the last 2 years, I feel like I've kind of been in this process that I don't really know what's going on. And it felt a little confusing and definitely emotional. And today it just felt like cleaner and lighter.
Yeah,
It
has
felt more articulate.
I mean, that's an interesting point. Like, has anyone else there felt the difference, especially if you have
Yeah.
gate 12, especially, you know,
Well,
you are a gate 12. You're a personality sun. Both of
Yeah,
you
yeah,
are a personality
yeah.
sun in gate 12.
I mean, I think yesterday I had the most intense emotional movement I've had in like years.
Wow.
So that was kind of interesting. When I looked this morning, I was like, okay. I think I want to check actually when 36 moved.
3:36 p.m. yesterday our time.
That's
Yeah.
literally when it happened.
Yeah, that's what
Literally
happened. Oh, we
happens.
had our own
I,
event.
I literally sobbed in a way that I've never experienced my entire life. Like literally the physical was like something I'd actually never felt before.
Well, and so this is kind of how I got on this topic of the relationship to a planet before and after your human design experiment. And so the last time Neptune was in 22, for those who don't know, Neptune was in 22 last year. It moved into 36. It retrograded, went back into 22. Now it's back in 36 again.
Yeah, I did a little bit.
And there's a lot of interesting things we can talk about with that. I mean, it really did kick off the 39-year cycle that we actually talked about last week, and which I may be able to pull up that graphic. I'm not sure if I still have that. I think it was on a different computer. But there's this amazing graphic. You were able to find that. I might look for that in a minute when someone else talks for a minute. I can find it. But basically, Neptune and Pluto are doing this amazing lockstep dance for the next 38 years now, starting last year, till 2060. And they're transiting the human experiential way. They're transiting different gates in the human experiential way. That is gate 41, gate 30, gate 36, gate 35. These, actually, I don't think 41 is not being transited, but 30...
It was
Or-
transited.
Right.
This is the end of quarter 4.
Okay, and then, so we'll have to see the exact... I mean, it could have been 30 that's missing, but anyway, 3 of the 4 planets are transited by Neptune and Pluto over this 39-year cycle. And it's so interesting, just like we saw where Neptune leaves 22, the sun goes right into it. I mean, these are multi-year transits sometimes. It's pretty weird when you see something have that close of tolerance. 12 hours later, something points out the exact, goes the same point. Well, we're seeing the same thing with Neptune and Pluto. How rare to have these 2 planets where one leaves gate 35 the next day, the next one enters 36, or things like that, of that nature. And we're seeing this lockstep movement of same day or next day entrances and exits from gates in the human experiential way. Now, Ra pointed to this period in time last year, actually, 2021 of May, which is when it first entered into gate 36, as the beginning of the melting of and the washing away of the human experience. The human experience being washed away by Neptune. Once it is washed away, Pluto can reinvent it. Neptune has to come first to get rid of all the old stuff, then Pluto has to come to introduce the new. And so they each have a role. The role of the debilitation and the dissolution of Neptune, and the role of the volcanic renewal, reinvigoration, even the phoenix symbolism, which is long been associated with Pluto. Pretty interesting. But what I was going to say was what I noticed last year when Neptune had entered into, it was in 22 and then it left 22 and it went into 36 the first time. And I noticed that my breathing was changed quite a bit, and I was noticing I was doing a lot more diaphragmatic breath. I was just breathing in a different way. And at that point, I started to really feel lucky that I knew human design before Neptune entered 22. Because 22 has a lot to do with breathing. It has to do with singing. It has to do with anyone with gate 12 will know it's very healthy for us to sing. We often have speech impediments. We often have breathing issues, which speech impediments are actually related to breathing. You can run out of breath while you're talking and so on. And we have these various, also because of the dropping of the larynx, and also because of, what Ra says is we don't know how to breathe. We don't know how to breathe simply because we have activation in this mutative area. I'm talking about gate 12s now, but really anyone with 12, 22, or the whole channel, look into your breathing, look into, and learn about it. Now, what's interesting for me is when Neptune transited this breathing and then left, I actually had the mental image. I get a lot of mental images for things. I have gate 64. And so I got the mental image of a surgeon who had just opened up the curtain. Finally, I left and I got to see what that surgeon had been doing that night. We're not going to know for another year or two what operation is going on with human sexuality. Right now, Neptune's in gate 36. Those of us who are in the human design experiment are dissolving all of our old negative habits around sexuality. Those who are not in human design are dissolving even the libido to be interested in sex, perhaps, or we don't really know. They're dissolving something else, though. you can see how, as the not self, when you're meeting resistance all the time, Neptune hits 22, and you get lung cancer. Neptune hits 22, and you dissolve your immune system. It's debilitating. It's the classic association. I mean, sorry to be so shocking about it, but the classic association of Neptune is as a debilitator. That same debilitation, I mean, that's a good thing if it's washing away the bad habits, if it's washing away, so it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of like Neptune is operating, it's doing something, it's clouded, it's veiled, it has the curtain up. I like to think of Neptune as a surgeon. I always associated Neptune with hospitals and things like that, I mean, which goes back to astrology, which is also funny. They really are such a surreal place. I don't know, if you spend a lot of time in hospitals, there's so much death that they have to make it kind of Las Vegas in order to survive. They keep their sanity by making everything a little bit surreal. But, there's always this association in astrology of Neptune being a debilitator. I'm just saying, if you're really living your design, it's going to wash away your negative habits, and you can be like, thanks, Neptune, I'm breathing more easily now. Thanks, I washed away a lot of the, but again, undefined solar plexus, if we're not self, and our solar plexus is full of congested emotion, Neptune's operating on that, it makes it into a festering pool, If we're living correctly, and we're letting out all that emotion, and we're not full of nervousness, and we're not hiding in all this stuff, what is Neptune operating on then? It's not operating on all the homogenized crap we've taken in. It's operating on the clean vessel. And when it's dissolving, it's just washing. It's giving us a wash. It's bathing us. Neptune just bathed our lungs, and now it's going to bathe, some other places.
I love that.
It's that sea foam, baby.
It's that sea foam. You got to bathe it with that sea foam.
Well, I love that you shared with your mental image, because I definitely felt like psychic surgery kind of was like a thought that came to my mind with having the 22 hooked up to my 12. I feel like that definition was really kind of dissolving away a lot of the shit that I had packed around my ability to kind of be myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's an individual channel. Like I felt like I had to dissolve all of that stuff, and the emotional solar plexus fears surrounding that as well.
Yeah, definitely in the sixth line for me, it was like a big, just learning that. I like the term of the exactness. You're thinking about the surgeon thing too, but yeah, for me, it's that just learning that the actual capacity for impact that I have, and reckoning with that in a non-egoic way, and being like, no, this is actually just emotional competency almost to a degree of like, how can I speak clearly about things and not be afraid of the backlash and be able to hold the whole responsibility around that power. I think so many manifested channel is just like, manifested channels are reckoning with the power of the impact, and like, how do you actually hold that power, and like, what do you do with it, and the impact it's caused, and how do you hold it afterwards. But yeah, for me, that was like the sixth line of 22 was just me like being like, okay, what's actually going to allow me to bring forth the mutative emotional energy? Because everything before that point was just like, I can't talk yet. I'm not allowed to speak. I'm not allowed to be seen. I'm afraid to be seen. It's not. Yeah, just got to figure all that out. And the sixth line was finally like, okay, it's literally useless if you don't make an impact there.
Yeah, it's a good point about. I always look at the manifestor channels, and I do include the 3420 as a manifestor channel, even though it's an MG channel. Because, if people have hanging gates in these channels, or, I just look to these channels as our relationship to impact. That's a great way to talk about it with power, and what is our power, what is our impact, and then what is our relationship to anger, and how are we doing with that? And also, hopefully 1222 has, I always say take deep breaths when you're angry. Hopefully this 22 transit has dissolved some of my bad habits with anger, because I've certainly, any undefined center collects detritus, it collects stuff, it builds up, and the buildup of 22, it needs to be washed away too. And so, I guess we could say that Neptune is conditioning us while it's in there, and it can be, this is why it's so multivalent, and it really depends on if you're in your design or not, because it's so different for Neptune to then go into 22 when I'm so full of anger and so full of conditioning about the way things should be and all this stuff, versus when it kind of has a clean vessel to operate on, a relatively clean vessel. It's a difference. It's a big difference. And
Yeah, my fear is that this Neptune transit at 36 is just going to create crisis, but without the clarity afterwards, without the actual like washing clean, and more of the just.
Well, I see it as
Chaos.
what's creating the asexuality, because Ra always said that there's going to be a tremendous asexuality coming around the corner, and that Neptune is washing away the older way of doing things. So it's washing away. So one thing that's being washed away is travel, for instance. 36 is also the adventurer. The adventurer goes out to travel. And so maybe, the next couple of years, by the end of it, we're not going to have the same relationship to travel anymore. Maybe after the next couple of years, we're going to have a different relationship to sexuality. We're not going to have the same relationship to, even just the experience. Sexual experience, exactly. It's such. It's already changing so much. There's already, and obviously, there's other reasons why Ra would say that sexuality is changing. Like we're going into the cross of the sleeping phoenix with 3420, the gate of asexuality. Although it's not really asexuality, it's just work first and then sexuality.
It's not it's not for making more people. It's for the work that
it's for getting the stuff done. Yeah.
This is my manifesting channel.
Oh, yeah. C is a manifester who is 12
22 is my North design. So I don't know. I feel like my whole life I've been told to be quiet, and just this last, couple of years, I'm finally realizing like. And then, especially in the sun, and like my new mantra is it's not my problem. I'm gonna say it and I can say, and like, if you don't like it, it's not my problem. And then also, now even with the 36 defined, now I have double manifest.
Yeah,
double manifester.
Oh, you're pretty nice.
Double manifester now.
This is where the rawness of the emotional comes
and
out.
so it's gonna be interesting.
That's right.
Yeah, I was just gonna say also 1222 manifested. I think it's so hard because so much that 12 is caution and holding back and knowing when to speak, and it's like, but a manifester needs to inform and like just say what they need to say.
And
so
it's
always
about
hard.
that and the emotionality of like living in this culture that's like don't, especially being a male bodied person, it's like don't ever tell me.
Yeah.
And it's like so. I watched my body like come back to life after starting to express my emotional state.
We have a few comments and questions. Jen, Joyful Projectors On. Hi, Jen. Thanks for joining us. Everyone, make sure to check out her awesome Instagram. It's just full of so much. I really hardly read. I read like you. I read Jen. I read Brayton. There's a few people, but I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings now. But I'm just saying I don't have a lot of time to read Instagram, and these are the ones I go to. Okay, so I got myself in hot water there. It's a fifth line day here. No, I mean I read all of them, and I have a list. I read everybody.
Everybody's valid.
I never log off of this.
I'm on Instagram right now. That's why. That's what I'm doing when I'm not on the screen. I'm hearting all your posts. But definitely check out Joyful Projector. She's great. Definitely check her out. The Garden Prophet. Greetings from upstate New York. You're appreciated. Yeah, I love New York. I haven't been too much through upstate, but it's beautiful.
What did Jen ask you?
Oh, she just said hi. But we're getting there.
You're getting comments on other missions.
Yeah, we'll get on. So Garden Prophet also said I got a 36 and 22 hanging gates. Well, yeah, I mean I know a lot about those. As a 12, I know the 22 very well. I always like what Rob would say about the 22 that they would always tell him, I just love your voice. I put on your lectures when I go to sleep. And he's like, well, the 22, they listen through the words, not to the words. They listen through them. They listen through the words to the feeling behind it. They're not going to catch what you're saying. They catch the sentiment. So, no, it's a joke. I'm sorry. 22s do catch what you're saying.
Also with 22, right? Like, they hear what mood they're in.
Well, there can definitely be, I've definitely had, especially with the 1222, which is, of course, dominates me. It's my compromise. I have to compromise when I'm around 1222s. And, if they're in the mood, it's they hear what it's like rose-colored glasses or different color glasses.
And, of course, an animal can have a hanging 12, and so you can appreciate their tone, right? You can appreciate the quality of the howl of a wolf. for instance, right?
No, that's a good point. That we actually, our 22 is maybe listening through the, oh, this animal's in pain. Oh, this animal's in a good mood.
And maybe R22 bringing in like hosting them a little bit.
Yeah. No, 1222 is great.
It's
Oh,
funny
so
because that's also going to
joyful.
endure after 2027, right? Humans will retain the spiritual connection to animals, no longer the domestic connection. But we will continue to hear the
Oh.
poetry of Howling Wolf, for instance.
right,
The
we're
wild
gonna,
animal.
And talk back.
That's a good
If
point,
in your
yeah.
case, yeah.
yeah, what Mike's saying is because we're really our channel of domestication is breaking our 1949, and that's all about domestication and all about really the culling of the herd, the bargain that we make with the animal kingdom.
Living with animals.
Yeah, yeah, and so that is changing, and I cannot wait to see the news headline. Thousands of cows stampede as they leave as they refuse to be domesticated. Scientists baffled. Why are animals no longer being domesticated? But that's a good point. That the 1222 already went through its mutation 90,000 years ago, and it's here to stay. So, and that is nice. So, Jen just said thanks. She says 22 is her personality moon and sign Jupiter. She said, yeah, thanks for the recognition. Don't want to get you in trouble, though. That's okay. I'm used to it. Yeah, Garden Prophet with 22-3 and 22-4 and 36-3.
I think we have some
And-
comments up there too.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all just
Someone has 12?
lady design. I have 22. I fall asleep to raw.
Oh, yeah. Well, you were who he was talking about. Things that they like.
Do we want to move it?
Yeah, we can kind of move these around. In fact, let's. That one's low battery, so let's.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's plug that one in.
So nice.
So thanks everyone for tuning in. Let's just
Yes.
Way better
any more comments.
Going for it.
Okay, so I do have this graphic now. The people tuned in on Instagram. It's not going to necessarily. I can show the screen. I don't know how it's going to work, but for people tuned in on YouTube, I'm about to throw this graphic on there. This was there last week, and this is made by Jan van den Berg, and this is a graphic showing just what I had just kind of talked about. Where let me show the streams if we can get it. You might just have to go. Yeah. Oh, you're right. It's going to be backwards. Yeah.
Just the
You're just going to have to go to Insta.
Oh, wait, never
For
No.
YouTube.
Yeah. So, just a second. I'm just kind of showing the people on Insta. So this is, we have to. Sorry, this is what we're doing. This is the way we're doing it now. I apologize. This is our reality in 2022. Neptune, okay? Neptune is making everything a little bit fuzzy, but yeah. So this is, and you can always go on our YouTube to see it. So this is what this is showing is when Neptune enters 36, leaves 36, when Pluto enters 41, leaves 41, Neptune enters 35, leaves 35, and then Neptune goes into 36.
Do you know the conjunction of outer planets? Like
Pluto
last
goes
year,
into 36.
the year before? There's a lot of planets in the same sign.
Yeah, I mean,
It's like
there's,
Jupiter, Saturn were in the same sign.
you can definitely, I mean, there's a lot of interesting things with the planets for sure.
I feel like the outer planets in the last 2 years were all in the fourth quarter.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but I mean,
Because Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn,
through Pisces, you mean, or you're going through,
they were going through Capricorn.
They were all
That's
on
right.
vacation. I see.
Yeah,
Yep.
they were all in the fourth
That's
quarter.
it.
At the end of the fourth quarter.
Hasn't-
20
oh,
That was maybe in 2020.
Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn, yeah, and then Neptune's been in Pisces for a long time.
Yeah.
For quite a while now. Well, yeah, there's definitely, I mean, when you start getting into the major planet movements, you find a lot of things. And it's not just this one. I just wanted to kind of show this one, and then I'll remove the graphic. But this one is just showing on May 9th, 2021, Neptune entered gate 36 for the first time, to start dissolving the human experiential way. Then it finally leaves, so it's going to be in 36 until April 10th, 2024.
Wow.
So we have Neptune. Well, that's Neptune. Yeah, Neptune takes a while. So it doesn't leave until 2024, April 10th, and then Pluto, April 12th, 2024, enters 41. So 36 hours later, right?
So I'd love to hear more about the Neptune you said Pluto is a.
Pluto is the truth, and Neptune is the veiled or the kind of fake truth.
Yeah, I'm curious
Yeah.
because I moved from my Neptune line to my Saturn and Pluto lines here,
Oh, nice.
and I'm just like never interested in going near my Neptune line again. I'm just like no.
Well, here, let me.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna delete this graphic, but really quick, just to finish it, I'll just say Pluto enters in to 41, and then it proceeds to retrograde direct through 2029. So literally, this Neptune now, so Neptune is now in 36 for 2024. It leaves 36 hours later, or 2 days later, Pluto comes in to 41 and stays there till 2029. It just going right, but it actually goes direct and retrograde quite a bit. Now it leaves in 2029. Then there is a pause. So this is what Jan van den Berg keynoted as death and resurrection. This is the death and resurrection of 2024 to 2029. So from 2021, which is when it first entered into when Neptune first entered. So we're 1 year in to a 3-year roughly dissolution phase, and then it's kicking off a 5-year phase of Pluto, right? So it's kicking off 5 years of Pluto, death and resurrection that doesn't end until 2029. Then we skip forward and we find all the way in 2056, Neptune enters into gate 35, leaves on, leaves on March 10th, 2058. Oh no, sorry, that's when it goes direct again. Leaves on April 3rd, 2060. On April 4th, 2060, Pluto enters gate 36. So it's so crazy. Neptune leaves a gate and Pluto goes in another gate from the human experiential way right after. I mean, these are lockstep connections. So what this is telling us is that this is a 2-phase process of completely wiping away and erasing everything familiar to the human experience for thousands of years. Carl Jung was born in 1875, and he said that his parents were in an unbroken chain of living since the 1200s.
Right.
They were living exactly the same as people did in the 1200s. No electricity, no running water, no anything. Exactly the same. This human experiential way is being washed away that anybody who lives through this will not recognize the world after this. It will be completely unrecognizable. So just realizing it's a 2-part process. The first one is the Neptune washing of 2021 to 2024. The Pluto death and rebirth, death and resurrection of 2024 to 2029. Then we have the Neptune washing of 2056 to 2060. The Pluto rebirth starting in 2060 and moving on.
When does Pluto go to 36 again?
In 2060. So not for 38 years. But, that's still, there are a lot of people alive now who will be alive for that, and we'll get to see, this whole process happen. So anyway, I'm going to move
Can I
that.
underscore the improbability of that? Just the elliptical orbits of those particular planets, especially Pluto, how oblong its orbit is. But the fact that they would converge in lockstep when they both, because they're not regular, right? The closer you get to the sun, the more you get these regular circles of planets. Venus traces a beautiful, perfect flower every time or whatever. But some of these outer planets, especially Pluto, are just like weird ass orbits.
Well, it's because it's not going along. I mean, along our ecliptic, it appears to be speeding up and slowing down and retrograde and all this stuff. It's because of the angle against the ecliptic. Because when they get so far out, I mean, there's others that have some strange things
no
too.
longer as flat.
Right, and then also, even though there is this very unusual relationship, I mean, the other thing is sometimes Pluto is closer than Neptune.
Oh yeah.
So they actually overlap each other's orbits. So theoretically, they could collide, but they're not going to because of the timing. But
Yes.
Pluto, Pluto goes closer to the Earth than Neptune at a certain point in its cycle. So in the Pluto-Neptune synodic cycle. The other thing, highly recommend a shout out to Richard Tarnas, Cosmos and Psyche, for the Neptune-Pluto cycle. That's the 2006 book of kind of Jungian analysis of the archetypes. Tarnas also had a really good point, which he said that Western astrology does a fine job if you want to know about Venus or Mars. We have plenty of Romeo and Juliet stories. We don't do a very good job of describing Neptune. Maya is a much better description of Neptune than Poseidon, right? We don't do a great job of describing Pluto. Kali is a much better version of Pluto. And then Uranus, this is really, this is Tarnas's big contribution. This is one of his first, his first book is called Prometheus the Awakener. Either that or it was he had a non-astrology book that was kind of big. But anyway, that he identified Uranus with the Promethean impulse.
Really?
With Prometheus. He was the first one to do that because before that they were saying that Uranus was the parent of the gods and some kind of greater than Saturn.
And does that? What's the opposite for Mercury, or what's the?
Yeah, that's
It's
it.
Uranus. That's so interesting because I think about Hermes and fire carrying
Right.
as this mercurial aspect, and that and I thought about the trickster's mercurial energy as the Promethean sort of idea. So it's just interesting.
Well, they are, and I don't think Uranus was the first one to call them octaves of each other. It definitely was thought when these, even in the 1800s and so on, people were
I've
saying
heard that they're like evolution.
yeah, or that they're octaves, that Venus and Neptune are octaves, Mars and Pluto, so on, evolution, so on.
So more complexity as we become more complex with newer, more complex archetypes.
That is,
where I think.
yeah. So we just had
That's where
a
asteroids
question to
is.
confirm, and that is absolutely right. There will be continuous cycles of Veils and Clarity with Pluto following Neptune. Yeah, so Neptune comes first, then Pluto. Then Neptune comes, and then Pluto.
Wash and then burning. Wash and then burning.
Yeah, wash and burn. There you go.
It is weird that they
S.
call
Castro,
Uranus
when is the next public
Uranus?
gathering? In Arizona. Oh, hey.
It's like they partnered to God.
Yeah, we're
It's
doing,
a-
we're planning one in August.
Because the people that named it were still Sun Center.
They're like, we don't
Hello,
understand
Isabel,
this thing.
welcome.
It's
Emily,
everything.
welcome. Be a fun few years, 35, 41, and 30. Well, we're quite the human.
That docu-series just came out, right?
Oh, I don't know.
I just have a question
Maybe-
about what's the
maybe
little
it's-
letters next to it? DHR.
That's genetic matrix. I don't use genetic matrix. Ban,
I'm
Instaban,
like,
ban
what
hammer,
does that
ban,
mean?
What does
What
ban
does that
hammer.
mean?
Um,
It means
Layla
it's like
Design
direct
said, so
to
Pluto's the
retrograde or
remedy.
something, and
I
wouldn't-
Is that what that means?
I wouldn't call it the remedy.
No, what's his
Pluto's burning. I mean,
It's the
it's not
compensation.
actual.
The planets have that
It's
compensation. It's just like binary.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
I have a
Highlights.
question.
Sure.
Did a Richard Primus documentary come
Yeah, I
out
don't.
recently?
Must be direct
It's
to
before
me,
the
but I don't know. What
Oh,
it is.
yeah, they made it in Santa Fe. They were working
They
on
made it in Santa
Yeah.
Fe.
I met the people who made it.
Oh, fuck.
I met them at a party, and we talked quite a bit.
Oh,
Yeah,
sheesh.
they've been working on it for years.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I
Did you
for
hear
a
that?
year. I'm gonna keep these in there.
What is it?
Not only is there
God.
Richard Primus documentary out recently, but they made it in Santa Fe.
If it's the
Oh,
one
great.
that I heard about, I met the people who were working on it. They were doing this like 6-part cosmology, archetypal cosmology series.
Richard Primus has been blowing up online.
Oh,
I
he
assume
really
that's
has.
why.
No, I've seen so much talk about him and growing up. And
I
Chad-
just heard about his book.
yeah,
not
Chad
that long
Harris
ago.
was.
No, it does,
No, I've well, yeah, I have a history. You have a history. Anyway, he's a Pisces. Happy birthday to Rick Tarnas.
Can you imagine a better astrology book? Like, that's about as good as-
It's the best astrology book there
It's
is.
the best astrology.
What,
book.
Cosmos and Psyche?
Yeah.
Oh, it's the best astrology
sure.
book there is.
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
really too bad that he's not in the human design. But you can't. You can only go so far and no
That's his
further.
book.
Well, he's. What a lot of people don't realize is that Rick Tarnas is the end of the line from Hillman, from Jung, really.
Yeah.
Jung to Hillman to Tarnas. And I mean, you can even go back before Jung to Piaget or different people, however you want. I mean, even Goethe, who was an ancestor. He was a descendant of Goethe, actually. But yeah, like Johannes. But anyway, you can go back. You can see that there are these lines. There are lineages of various kinds, and Tarnas is absolutely the end of the line for astrology. He's the last.
I'll,
He's the last astrologer.
I'll
We're calling it.
I'll throw in Kieron the Grice or whatever, the guy that wrote the Eurus book. That's a very Tarnesian dude writing about Eurus.
Yeah, and there's all
Eurus
sorts
potentially
of.
being a planet from the Raves, you said.
Well,
I was
yeah.
just about to ask about that. Like, what about all the asteroids and different things? And are those because they're coming out? I keep thinking of like Nine Center is also increasing complexity and all of these interests in asteroids and different things is like just more complex archetypes for understanding.
Yeah, I mean, so Ra actually has a great point about Chiron. I don't have it. I can't pull it up, but he talks about exactly the moment when Chiron was discovered and what the actual configuration was, like the body graph for that moment, and just how perfect and how symmetrical it was. And, these discoveries are absolutely not random. They enter into the Maya at the time, and then you can see obviously Chiron entered in with self-help and
They came on
and so on. Yeah, they come on time. And I've often talked about how the seven-centered systems have scaffolding. For instance, even the 12 planets are kind of scaffolded in such a way that you could add Chiron as a secondary ruler, and you could add Eris as a secondary ruler, and you can keep going with these. What I've noticed, so definitely for us nine-centered beings, Chiron is not an activator. My Chiron is in gate 20. Both Chirons are in gate 20. I am not a manifesting generator. I'm a turtle. I'm not a hare. I would know because I feel when gate 20 is around. Jenny has gate 20, and I know when she's around, we have that. Like, I don't have 3420 constantly firing 24/7. Now, some people might argue with me and say, no, Jonah, you're a powerhouse, you work all the time. This and that. Well, yeah, I have 34. But 34 can power a lot of stuff. It can't, there's not, powers 3 things, not just 20. And I know what 3420 is like. I felt it. I know what the compromise is like, everything. So Chiron does not activate in your chart. And this actually was a question that came up later. So something to talk about.
Yeah, I get this question from my students a lot.
Yeah, and these things are very significant. They absolutely are. There's no just dismissing the discovery of something as insignificant. What it is the first question is, does it activate? No. The second question, well, what does it do then? Well, it's symbolic of what appeared at that time. 1781, French Revolution, Uranian Promethean impulse.
Why isn't the first question what the neutrinos are
Because it's not how it works. It's not just if the neutrinos pass through it. If you actually read wave cosmology, you'll see that, for instance, Jupiter is a star. Nothing else on our planet is a star.
Yeah,
Jupiter actually emits neutrinos. Everything else has to filter, but it's not just that they're passing through the planet, because then it just passes through the planet, goes into empty space. It has to actually go into a coordinating agency. So when you get into the wave cosmology materials, see, it's not like we can just use scientific measurements and reason to reverse engineer this stuff. There's a much more mysterious mechanism by which imprinting occurs. And that much more mysterious mechanism is not just, it's not that, because for instance, even just the fact that nothing even emits neutrinos except Jupiter.
Wow.
Even that is kind of mysterious.
Yeah, that's a point of contention that I'm like, I don't want people to focus too much on Jupiter in their chart, but I've read that and I'll share that with certain folks. And Jupiter's really important.
It's 4% of the neutrinos that we've received, and it does relate to the aura in specific on the design side. And yet, it's not just because it's 7% or 4% of the neutrinos and the Sun Earth is 70% of the neutrinos, this and that. We don't fully know if it's a quantitative thing anyway. I mean, who's to say that the quantity of neutrinos is what imprints you? So, yeah, Chiron is absolutely an interesting. It's also because it's been called the Rainbow Bridge. It's between Mars and Jupiter. Chiron in the solar system is between Mars and Jupiter, and it has a really weird orbit too. This 50 or 52 year orbit, or 49, 50 year, whatever it is, where it'll go, depending where you are in the orbit, it can take a really long time to reach the opposition, or take a really short time to reach the opposition. Because if you're here, it goes whoop, whereas if you're here, it has to go all the way around there to get to that same opposition. So sometimes you get to the opposition point extremely quickly with Chiron. Other times it takes 25 years to get to the opposition point if you're on the far end. So or maybe I'm slightly wrong, or maybe it's not.
It is crazy.
I guess not opposition on the wheel, but opposition in its own orbit. I'm not talking about all along the ecliptic there. I don't want to confuse people, but we do have Neptune in 36. It's going to be confusing.
I think it's a testament to how far behind science is when you look at one of the diagrams of the design crystal in the books.
Yeah.
It's comical.
Yeah.
Because it's clearly not only not a two or 3 or 4 dimensional thing, but a several dimensional, higher dimensional thing.
Yeah. The crystals are immaterial, but the neutrinos have mass. So
the neutrinos are the thing that interacts between the two.
They would be quantitative, because if something has mass, it must be.
You're absolutely right that the neutrinos are what interacts on both levels. They interact with dark matter on the one side, and they interact with matter on the other. And so it is true that, being flooded by neutrinos theoretically is interacting at some level. According to conventional science, you're lucky if a single neutrino interacts with you once in your entire life. Because neutrinos can pass through you all day long and never interact.
Yeah.
But we have witnessed their interactions, so we know it's possible. What it really comes down to, you can experiment with it. I would definitely be interested in seeing where Chiron is in your chart. That's very interesting. And you can even look where Eris is in your chart. I tend to think that some of these will take on different qualities to future people, like the Raves, and like Iris, for instance, may actually be very important to them in a way you'll never understand. I mean, I'm not really sure about that, but it just seems like we are of a certain time. We entered right around the time of Uranus. There were no projectors before then, which is always interesting to me. Like, how is it that it just turns on a dime where at this point this is happening, at that point that's happening? Like, was there a crossover? Were there people born after 1781 who are still 700? Or it doesn't seem like it. It seems like it just changes. And so it is really interesting when you start to look at, that's the kind of synchronistic aspect where you just have to ultimately, and this is, to bring it back to Rick Tarnas, this is what Cosmos and Psyche is about. He only looks at the outer planet synodic cycles and says, why is it that the May 68 student revolution occurred simultaneously to the largest ever mutiny on a ship, where 600 people mutinied, and yet they didn't have radio. They didn't know that the Parisian students were protesting. They were just doing it at the exact same moment. And these kinds of things, right? You just find this orchestration that exists at a different level.
I have a thought about Chiron.
Okay.
This just popped in my head. It has no basis. But in astrology, it's like the wounded healer. And what if it pointed to something about deconditioning? You know what I mean? Like, because I'm thinking, like, my Chiron is conjunct my ascendant and my sun. And so when I've had an astrologer look at my chart, they're like, holy shit, like, that's, like, all those together, right, at your ascendant is shows that, like, you're going to go through all this pain, and then you're going to go through it and then help other people, or whatever. But when you look at it through the human design lens, like, in order to really do that, you have to decondition and heal from all of that stuff from the past. So, just a thought.
I feel you there. Mine's conjunct my
I was trying to. I don't even know where mine.
Yeah.
And all in the 11th house.
Yeah. Sensitive area for that.
I think it's Cancer. But yeah.
Want another beer?
Sure.
I'll have one too. And we're going to take a short break and we're going to come back. We're having internet connectivity issues. So,
I'm sorry about
sorry
that.
all, the internet is not working.
You have Comcast?
Mine is conjunct sun in the 7th house.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just take a short break and then we're going to return with the journey around the wheel. And we'll keep talking about Neptune. We're just going to take a 5-minute break while we troubleshoot internet connectivity. Please stay with us. And we don't need to pause. So let's keep it going.
No, I'm really curious about this idea of these other planets coming in, like, or asteroids, whatever they are, planetoids, whatever. Yeah, because to your point about deconditioning, I think sometimes, like, to 9-centered folks, deconditioning is healing. But this is something that I often get almost frustrated at the rhetoric with human design is like, you just tell people to decondition, and for some people they have like no, even if they're following their strategy and authority, I just feel like there's so much work that they have to do to actually heal before they can actually bring their deconditioned self like online. And I don't feel like human design always holds that process completely. Or at least not its surface study.
Here's I have a response to that, which is there's a guy, Jason Hawley, who really loves to use, he didn't come up with this trifecta, but he loves to use the day world, the night world, and the twilight world. And this actually came from a Jungian. It wasn't Henderson. I can't remember if anyone knows who first came up with these distinctions. And it's in clinical practice, really. And it's when somebody comes in to a therapist, because he's a therapist, professional, mental health counselor, licensed, everything. Not like us human design people. We're not therapists, believe me. Do not come to any of us for therapy. We do not want to give therapy. But like you're saying, you're working with somebody who has trauma, who has healing work to do, and so on. And so what he was saying is that when people come to him, his first assessment is, okay, are they having day world problems? Day world problem is you can't keep down a job. You can't keep a relationship. You can't get out of bed. You can't face the world. You cannot interact. It's a problem of adaptation. Then you have night world problems. So these people have lots of money, they have everything, they have no meaning in their life. They feel empty, they're aimless, they're not sure what they should do. They're,
Saturnian, but not Uranian.
yeah, and right, and then you get to the twilight, and the twilight is where they're really trying to find ways to kind of walk the middle path and find a way to integrate and so on, and that is the individuation path that leaves behind the day world, but also isn't just, someone who is having day world problems probably doesn't need to do Gestalt screaming into a pillow. They probably need to figure out what is preventing them from keeping a job, what is preventing, or maybe with their projector, so, but what is preventing them from, whatever it is, that sort of adaptation that is necessary as a baseline before you can even have the privilege of undertaking some sort of individuation journey or some. What Rob points out, by the way, and we still have nodes in 14, so something to think about. People always put money in the tribal, but 14 is money too, and it's what we call FU money, which is the kind of money where you can do whatever you want. You can be as weird as you want. I mean, as long as it's legal. As long as it's legal, you can be. And that's what Gate 14 is, and it's individual. It's punk money that says I'm going to be, because I always say punk in the sense of like individual is like I'll do my own thing. I don't want to have any tell me what to do and all this stuff. And it's just, if you don't have money, you're just weird, and if you have money, you're eccentric, and it sucks. A lot of people have problems with this, and I can talk to people all day long who have problems with the way the world is structured. Totally. But your problem with the way the world is structured does not change the way the world is structured. Yeah. So this is all. The more you look at the wheel, the more you see it's all just a merry-go-round, and you're not going to change it. The merry-go-round was there a long time before you got on it, and it'll be there a long time after you get off.
I love that. I love the idea of the night, the day, and the twilight as well, because this is something I talk about with the individuation process within human design, is that there's, and thinking about the hero's journey, or the mystical way, that there's core competency, which is very Saturnian, which is actually being able to exist in the world, which requires initiation into competency, and also support and logic and all of these things to like actually move through the world as it is in capitalism. Even if you fucking hate it, you got to deal with it. That's it. So that's a core competency. And then the individuation side of it, actually connecting to your true essence, like who you really are, your gifts that you have on not a Saturnian level, on that deeper level. And then that place that is just being able to move between those really well. And that's where you have to garner a sort of self-trust that you can move through that. You have to have a core competency, a deep connection to self, and then the trust that you can navigate both of those. And that's the only way that the 10, your role, or that sort of energy of the 10 comes out. Like you can actually just bring your true essence self through in the reality of the world right now.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And it's just that different people are going to have different problems, and we really in human design it's also fractal lives, and it's sad to say, but the problems never go away. They just they just change where you are in the fractal line. And so if your problem is how do I make money, you're probably pretty far down the fractal line from human design. And a lot of people are. They get into it and they go, oh, this is going to help me make money. By and large, it's not really about that. I mean, Ra finally did a money course, and we can talk about it, and at the same time, all of us need to exist in the day world, and so it's kind of like you don't even have the privilege to not care about money until you have it. It's one of those paradoxes.
And this is why I hate doing business work with people, or people who ask about business, because I'm like, if you're trying to game your design to make money, you are so quickly entering the not self of like ego. I mean, 70% of the world has an open ego. You're in an ego world. You're trying to like prove your worth through your capacity to gain resource. And yes, you need resource to survive, and there's splenic fear and everything underneath that. So, but yeah, that to me, it just kills me. So I'm like, I don't want to talk about your business. I'm a 36 son anyway, so I'm just like, let's talk about let's confront the actual emotional problems that you need to heal to like actually even be able to have the capacity to consider holding resource in a healthy way.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot we can say about these things, but it's really when you, I mean, also, I think it's part. I mean, so this has been an interesting one. Maybe you want to comment on, Mike, and then I do want to get to the journey around the wheel, and we'll jump on that for a second. But it's just that there's been criticisms of human design, and I think I get it, but it's the criticism, one of the criticisms is just how much privilege it requires to have your own bed. What about all the people who don't have the privilege to have to sleep in their own aura? Exactly. That's us. That's not the us versus them. See, here's what I don't like. People always do us versus them. Us in the West and them who aren't in the West. Okay, we were all them. And they were all us. Because I've reincarnated 288 times in the past 19,000 years. Believe me, that's the most. That's the Weaver sequence. We talked about this. You have too.
Yeah.
We've been through a lot of lives. Mike has only reincarnated 40 times or something.
I make each one count.
but I'm just saying, don't you think during some of those reincarnations we lived in dirt floor hovels? Don't you think in some of those reincarnations? And and I guess you could say with the fractal lines, I've always lived it pretty good. With the fractal lines, we kind of tend to get into the same position every time. But besides that, I just want to say, we get to have all of these experiences. So the whole thing about privilege breaks down when you start to realize past lives, when you start to realize how much... I'm not going to say that we shouldn't critique privilege. We absolutely should. And we should absolutely acknowledge how privileged we are. But again, it's the levels thing where, okay, on the one hand, we say...
Yeah, the audio on your phone went out.
Oh no, what happened? Oh, it was when Chris called. Damn. Sorry.
My phone's been doing this now too. If I have any shift, like any receive anything,
Yeah.
it ruins the audio on the phone.
How's
When
the
I'm
other
on
one?
live.
My video ended. Okay, I'm just gonna do the new one now. Sorry about that, everybody. Okay, let's live go. All right, we're back. Sorry about that, everyone. Okay, we just fixed it. Thanks.
Yeah, but I do agree, Jonah, with when we start talking about that type of stuff, I'm always questioning to what end are we talking about it?
Well, right. I don't want to. Here's the thing. I don't want to ever show that I don't have empathy for anyone who has less privilege. And I understand that in the West we are all extremely privileged, and you as a white male is exceptionally privileged. So it's not about that. It's about realizing that with fractal lines and with really the game of telephone, that you can see all these euphemisms. And the further you get from the real mutative core, the more the person is living out a euphemism for the thing and not the real thing. And eventually you get to the point where the euphemism is such, it's like, I hate to say it, but how some people live on tiny amounts of money. Well, people also live on tiny amounts of satisfaction. There's generators barely scraping by because they got just that little bit of satisfaction from telling someone off. Yay, I finally got an opportunity to just go, yell at somebody or whatever it is. There's generators who are just barely eking out, just barely getting by. And so all I'm trying to say is wherever you are, you can, it's basically I'm not going to say that we have a choice because I think it's the most worst thing in the world to say that it's your mental attitude that's put you in a place. Regardless, wherever you are, you have a problem, and the problems always become one. They become 100%. Like I had a debate once when I used to do that with my undefined ego with someone who was saying that you are unethical if you're a therapist or a doctor for bankers because bankers should all be shot. And this is a very hardline Marxist who was saying that, if you're helping them, and I was arguing on the side of, no, everyone's suffering is equal, that suffering is suffering, and that you can hate somebody, but they're still suffering in some way or another. Now, just because their suffering is equal does not mean we have to treat them as equal. We can lock them up if they're doing something illegal, and we should, but, it doesn't mean that we should pretend that our suffering is greater than the suffering of other people. So that is hubris. So that's my only point there. I really want to get to the journey around the wheel. So everyone who...
Also imagine if 7 billion people did
Yeah, well, but the thing is... Well, it's not possible, but 7 billion people couldn't live the way non-Americans live either. It's also not possible. The thing is, in that... people would go, I'm sorry to say it, but the world needs to have all these different movements, and I'm all for opening borders so that people can have the freedom of movement to go wherever is correct for them. So, I'm very much, I have a kind of controversial view. For instance, I just think we should have open borders and people should be able to move and kind of just allow freedom of autonomy, and then it'll kind of self-organize. And
True.
yeah, I mean, there's going to be all sorts of rebalancing that happens. We're about to see probably the biggest breakdown of large-scale, organization ever.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is that large-scale organization has given people a lot of meaning in their life.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of people who spent their whole lives. I mean, my family's from West Virginia, which is the poorest or among the 3 poorest states in the U.S., and my family's coal miners, and I grew up on food stamps, and I've grown up in poverty and surrounded by poverty, and I've seen people who are really satisfied because they're part of something bigger than themselves.
Mhm.
And they are so happy to be that little cog in the machine. They feel like they're just the brightest little cog, the best little cog, because they're doing God's work, and God told them that, and they're okay because of it, and they have a family, and the family gives them purpose, and they're happy. And I mean, I hate to say it, but just because we wouldn't be happy in that life doesn't mean that they're not happy in that life. And yet, from my perspective, it's a very sad life. Well, my only point there is that there has been this huge conditioning field propping that up, saying your family is your reward. Being part of something bigger than you is your reward. In the future, no one's going to care about being something
In
big.
the individuated future.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's going to be very, very different. So, no, I do not think any of this is sustainable or it's going on. But, I also don't think human design is contributing to the problem by selling materials. And I don't think that because I haven't devoted my life to dismantling the capitalist apparatus, I'm part of the problem either. In fact, I think I'm part of the solution. I think everybody in human design is part of the solution because we're doing what we can to reduce the resistance in the world, reduce the frustration in the world, and so on. So of course, we all think we're part of the solution. So, okay,
We're
so
encouraging people to have awareness and have an inner revolution, which then
Body measure.
as
In a way, it is
so
insurance.
much.
Isn't
So-
being convinced that you're part of the revolution kind of as close as you're going to get to know me? You know what I mean? It's like if you're being realistic with yourself and you feel that you're doing the right work or whatever, that's all you have to go on anyway. What else is there? You only know what you know. You only have access to what you have access to. And if certain lifestyles are repulsive to you or you feel that they're not appropriate for you, then they probably aren't. So you might as well do what is appropriate.
That's why utopia is untenable. People never reach utopia because once we reach it, there's no more.
That's a good point.
Wow.
It's very much the revolution.
yeah, and I will just do a quick shout out. Well, okay. Okay, so we're about to go check out the journey around the wheel. So we have gate 9. No, wait, that's not very gate.
Did I send you
That was the most recent one. Okay, well, we'll be back for journey around the wheel.
63.
We'll be back momentarily. Psych. Well, that was the most recent one that I have in my downloads folder. So can you send it again?
Yep.
Okay, great. Alrighty, we'll just take a moment. All right, thanks everyone for joining.
right.
Embrace the difference, says Higa. If we were all the same, it would be very boring. Yeah, that's true. Okay, hopefully it says lost audio again. You guys have audio? I don't know. I hope you do.
Do other people have audio? Or just
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got audio. Great. Okay, that was just from the call. Okay, so we're going to take a look. Just be a second here. Perfect. So this was, we just left gate 63, doubt, and this is the journey around the wheel.
Did you say 47?
What? 47?
And there's my video capture.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move over here, I guess.
This has been the theme for 22 is 47, yeah.
All right.
I love Saucy Rulership so much. I have so many rulership friends. They rule.
All right. So what can you tell us about gate 63?
Wow, really put me on the spot. So I think I'm just gonna riff on it because I could feel as soon as 63 entered in on Tuesday evening.
What's always 47?
And what?
Today's 47?
The Earth is 47.
63 must be over if it started on Tuesday.
Yeah, 22.
Oh,
is
I'm
from-
talking about last week.
Gotcha.
We're in 22.
Okay.
But I haven't made the card for 22 because I've been making the cards in the energy,
Gotcha.
and so I'm just showing
Gotcha.
63.
Yes.
So that's a great thing to say. We're not in gate 63 right now. We
In case
finished.
you were doubting.
Yeah, in case you're doubting or questioning. But yeah, so 63 really put me into a tailspin of like doubting my whole life, pretty much. And I didn't really gain traction until the weekend, and that's when I created the card. And so basically, this is the gate of doubt, and it is a logical, collective gate. It's in the head center, and basically, it's meant to question, and in order to make sense of the world, it looks at the patterns and questions the patterns in order to make the proper choices and to move forward and make better decisions moving forward. But this is meant to only really be external. This is a good person to talk to if you need advice on things. But when you start to reflect that doubt inward, it can be really debilitating and really hard. A lot of mental anxiety. Doubt. We've all felt doubt before. It's it's a really strong feeling. And yeah, so some of the things I wrote here, I'm just gonna. This gate always has a question for any answer that it's given. So it's almost like you go in one door and there's a new door to open.
Wait, isn't that the opposite? So, no, it is. It's true, but I'm just joking. It's that's a question for every answer. It's kind of like the opposite of what we would assume.
Yes.
We would think there's an answer for every question, but it's actually, and I can
question
speak.
for it.
And as a 4, this is true. 4 is the other side of 63, and people, every answer I give generates more questions. So.
Yes, yeah. And that's further refining, right? Or it's changing your path. Joni, you had said the other day, you can have all these questions about something, and then you get an answer, and then there's a new question, which just pushes all the other questions away because you're no longer interested in that anymore. You've shifted. You've went on a new path. I think it's really interesting. The I Ching hexagram is called after completion, and it's in the spiral of life, all ends are beginnings. I think that is so beautiful. That is a really amazing keynote, and it resonated with me this week because with the doubting of life, knowing that it's a spiral, and I had written this line where it's the mind can take you in circles, but with awareness, you can really understand it's a spiral that's unfolding in front of you, and that's why I chose the imagery I did. When you look at the card, it's a magnifying glass that's looking up at the cosmos, and then there's a spiral kind of within it. Thanks, Jonah.
And the card is on Everyone is Different or on Instagram.
Yep. And so I think it's a really interesting gate, but for me it was really easy to get hijacked by it. But it's an extremely mental gate. It's yang, 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 right? I started reading it, and Ra was like, "This is the most mindy gate." I think he even used that word, mindiest gate or something. Something kind of funny like that.
It seems like a little kid.
Oh,
It's like a little kid, just like why?
There's the
Why?
precociousness.
Why?
Yeah,
Well,
why?
what's also funny is that people often think that the not self of the undefined head is only overthinking, but it can also be refusing to think. It can be being so skeptical and so doubting that anything could ever help. That we don't ever call it closed-minded because it's open, and yet at the same time, it's open to suspicions and doubts and unfounded skepticisms that don't really need to be there. You know?
Right.
So just another point there that the design of mental stillness or calmness, I forget the word he uses, but it's not a design of mental activity like the 64. Nevertheless, the 63, it is open to conditioning. It's just open to the conditioning that makes it doubt and it shouldn't. They're the most skeptical people of human design is not self.
I was going to say a 61 and a 63,
Yeah.
like conspiracy theorists spinning out completely like obscure like doubts. No, it's not that. It's aliens. You know, just,
I think having the 63,
Yeah, spinning out.
the most common questions I ask are right, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because I make a statement, and then I'm like, right? And then I'm like, are you doubting me or not doubting me?
To be clear, you have the whole channel.
No, I just have the
Oh, you do?
63.
Oh.
But we make the channel.
Yeah.
Very sweet.
And so what's the thing about how this is one of the few gates beyond human, whatever, the 63 and the 64? That these are sort of forever,
They're
perennially
outside.
unappreciable by a human body. What is that?
I'll take it if
Yeah,
you want
please
me to.
do.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what Mike is referencing is that 63 and 64 are kind of, in some sense, outside of, what Ross says is he says, so you start with 64 hexagons, then you realize that 1 and 2 are the same. They're actually only one hexagon. So then you only have 63. But then you realize 63 and 64 are the same, so really you only have 62. You only actually have
so
62
it starts
hexagons.
with, and Richard Rudd says it starts with 3 and ends at 61, and then 62, 63, and 60. 62 its own thing, and then
Yeah,
63
it's kind of its own, you get the facts at the end, and then you get the binary. And so
It's the credits at the end.
But if you think about, if really the 63, so the way I like that Rod described it, he said the 63 and 64 are like a sunroof. And when you have people who have these gates, or particularly if it's their definition, or particularly if it's their personality sun, or their class of consciousness, or things like this, they'll be basically going through life looking up through the sunroof. And everybody else is seeing all the streets and the people and the houses and the cars, and they just see a shape go by, and they go, look at that shape. And they just see some weird form go by. Look at that form. They go through the tunnel. Hey, when it's dark, they're like, no, we're just in the tunnel. They're like, what's a tunnel? Like, they're only looking up. Like, they're not interested in the world. They're interested in the thing that nobody else sees. They're interested in what's beyond. One of the things I really like for Ra's description of the 63 in particular is where he says that they're really on a mission, and they're on a mission to find the right question. And every question, they have 8,000 questions. They're a Christian, they have 8,000 questions. How many angels fit on the head of a pen? Suddenly, they ask a question that blows their mind, and they suddenly lose their faith. Now they'll never ask a question ever again. They never answer them. It's like what Jung says. Jung says we don't solve our problems, we just outgrow them. They don't get an answer, they just stop asking the question. The new question blew away all the old questions. And he said, really, they're on a mission to find the question for which the only answer is silence. So it's kind of nice. 63, am I even a gate? Says Projector Emily. Am I even a gate?
Personality, Earth, and the Sun is 64.
Oh, you're across the consciousness.
Oh,
Yeah,
across
across the
the
consciousness. Yeah.
Also, my sunroof is broken right now.
Your sunroof is broken, so you're driving around watching
It just got nothing going on.
Oh.
So
Well-
you're at channel 64.
Oh, wait, it's broken closed.
Yeah.
That's the worst.
I mean, I think that's also interesting to look at too when we're looking at the gates, is looking at that polarity and seeing how they are like kind of these, two sides of the coin. And, you have the logical and the abstract with the, 63 and 64 is like, 64 brings the imagination, and 63, I don't know, just brings the kind of more cutthroat, logical, like, cut you down.
Well, it's just refusing to think about it. That's how I see it. 64 will think about anything and everything. 63 won't think about the first thing. All it thinks about is, do I have to think about it? And it just goes...
I feel like 63 is exacting, where 64 is trying to... It's trying to consider everything and where it fits. 63 is going, I don't want to consider all of this, I'm going to consider this.
Well, and it's also that they have different purpose. So 64 ultimately needs a story. And here's
Yeah,
the
it's
thing.
experience.
You have a bunch of images, and those images are true. They're real things that happened. You know that at 6 p.m. I showed up here, at 9 p.m. I left. These are the facts. It's like a Sherlock Holmes or something. That's
Somebody
64.
told me the fact.
Yeah.
or somebody
Well,
told me
yeah,
the
but we can
experience.
be pretty sure that the points are facts. Now, the connective tissue,
Yeah.
what happens between 6 and 9 p.m.
Extrapolation.
is going to change. It's like one of those, like...
That's where my 56 loves to play.
Yeah, well, and it's like one of those, Agatha Christie or something, where they ask 10 different people and get 10 different stories. And so what the 64 is doing is trying to make a story that makes sense. They're trying to find a story that makes sense. And 47 comes along and goes, here's a story that'll work. This is the connective tissue. This is the... I have my... I don't know, stop me if you've already heard it, but I love the story of the man who washes his cows. And he takes milk and then washes the cows with milk, and then he massages the cows, then he stares at his feet for a long time, then he scribbles in a little notebook, then he makes tiny nails. And the question is, what is this man doing? Well, he's making shoes. The cows are for leather, the milk is so light or soft, the nails are for the shoes, the feet are the scribbling is so he knows the dimensions. I mean, but you don't know that until you get the connective tissue. That is the 64-47. 63 is not about connective tissue. It is about... It's almost about
Brain.
asking the right questions. It's like, and even the right question, it's like, I think of it like there's a great Sherlock Holmes where he says, they're at a place, it's the Hound of the Baskervilles. And he goes, you hear that? And then Watson says, what? I don't hear anything. Precisely. And that is 63. We should be hearing that. I'm doubting that we should be hearing the dogs. There's no dogs right now. Where are the dogs? So it's like this kind of skeptical doubt that's it's different than the connective tissue of the story. Now, they both work hand in hand, and the abstract always claims to be the logic and vice versa. And you get both of them, and they're always fighting. I mean, if you meet someone who's purely abstract, particularly with their 64-47, they will argue to the bitter end that they are the most logical person there is, and that there's no other game in town. Because they want to, the collective is divided between the dry and the wet, and each claims they're the only game in town. So,
And the 63-4 can be so imagistic.
well, 64-47 is more logistic.
Well, no, generally, yeah.
Oh.
I'm saying that they can resemble each other. And the 64 can appear.
They can both imitate each other. They can both make stories. of each other.
It's in the name. So after completion and before completion, there and the beginning. Ra talks about. He speaks to it in the keynotes, the cycles, and where we see the cycles in the collective experiential process of the abstract, of the cyclical nature of it. And then I forget what the other one is, but the 64, I forget exactly what it is. But this is before completion, correct?
This is after.
This is after completion, which, if you think about the experiential process, it's only after completion in which you actually have the understanding of what even happened or what was in that experience. The experience is embodied first, and then in the 64, before completion, that doesn't make any sense because the experiential is always
But it's
after.
the confusion of images.
It's a
and
cycle.
yeah.
But Ra talks about this, that he named him that because he was talking about the correlation and the crossing of the collective lines in the ajna.
Right.
Kind
Well,
of
right. No, I know
process.
exactly the part you're talking about. And I remember where he says, it's actually a quote where he goes, this is so weird. You look at the 64, 61, 63, and, the 61 looks like it should be abstract, and the 64 seems logical, and the 63 is, he's like, he's basically, like, they all are kind of just, I think it's in the Ravi Ching line companion. That's where it is. That's where it
That's
is.
what he talks about.
Yeah, exactly. It's right. Which I actually have pulled up. I haven't pulled up to 63. We could even... Maybe it's time. Maybe we're going to talk about
Yeah.
63. Okay.
Another
There we go.
amplification occurs to me. That the theme of the energy deprivation of the logical stream being the unwillingness to think, even though that there's no motor involved between the head and the throat, right? There's no motor there in either case, and yet still the logical stream has this theme of deprivation, and while the abstraction draws on so much,
And that's why it's more certain. It could be even more certain because it's like the energy. I could repeat it. I could
higher
repeat it.
resolution.
Yeah.
The
Well, you're
63
saying,
does.
you're
64.
saying two different things. I mean, you're saying that the logic is more confident, which is absolutely true. But what Mike is saying is that despite being more confident, it's always starved. No one wants to hang out with it. Like,
The 64,
I guess because what you're saying is because there's only the 52 and the 58 as root fuels, and yet the solar plexus fuels the experiential. It's not fueling the logic. Splenic doesn't fuel the logic, so there's this asymmetry where the logic is always starved. The logic is always looking for energy. And you'll find this even at the macro level of scientists looking for research grants.
Yep.
There's never enough. But you want to throw a Coachella 2022,
Yep.
everyone will be there.
Yeah, it's
So-
got the emotional field of
Yeah, and it's the abstract. The Ripened Heart says, these gatherings of amazing humans warms my heart. Well, I guess you're Ripened Heart. Thank you so much for that. Simone Gallagher, hello. Hugh Chester, Eliza, Jess Fields, Modern Cosmic Woman. We have a lot of people here. This is great. Thank you all for joining. Beautiful graphics from Atlantis Mantis. Anastasia Morrison, yes, 63 was so apparent for me this last week. Well, I'm a 4, so I mean, all week long I was doubting everything I did, questioning it. Garden Prophet, quad right as well, 6'2 splenic projector, awesome. Oh, Atlantis Man is also quad right. Very cool. Oh yeah. Borders are immensely annoying to my flow. Yeah, when we were talking about closed borders and so on. Yeah, you got to be able to go anywhere. Oh, Linnell, you're an hour late. Well, yeah, we'll be uploading, but yeah, we're just hanging out. Just hanging. So, okay, let's see if we have any questions. Anybody? Okay, audio is good. Gymnastic quad. Thank you, Jim Zarda. We hear you. Great. Jenny around the wheel, Neutrino Radio. That is right.
Jenny around the wheel?
Oh, somebody just was shouting you out. Jenny around the wheel.
Nice.
Sophia.
We're ready for you.
Aligned Beings.
Your public
Hello. Iolani Young. Hello. Sacred Journal. All right. Cypress Healing Arts. Hello. Layla Design. Or please tell me if I'm saying that wrong. I have 35-3 personality Chiron saying I feel in my experience has been equivalent to cuss words. Oh, that's so interesting. That's great. Well, I think to the point that Chiron is not activated. It's not Chiron's activation. Just Sammy Ray. Hello and welcome. Wild about Jupiter. I had no idea. Yeah, Jupiter is the only planet that is actually used to be a star and does emit neutrinos.
Failed star. Never ignited.
Oh, okay. It's star. Yeah, I was. And then
There was the potential for it to become a star.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Chris Blanton, Modern Cosmic Woman, Cat Worshipper, Iris, welcome.
Is it the third quarter was Jupiter?
Enjoy the Light Design,
right,
welcome.
Jupiter. Yeah.
Evelyn B, welcome.
I think it's a
Archetypology, welcome.
But I've always wondered about that. I'm just like, because the other ones make sense because they're distant stars where neutrinos are coming in a little more fixed. But Jupiter is not. It's in an orbit. How do they create a fixed quarter? Have you understood that? Like I think it's the third quarter that's called the realm of Jupiter. And I've always wondered why, because the other realms are named after fixed stars that are really far out.
Right, like Sirius and Dubay.
Alcyone.
Oh, we had a question about Aldebaran earlier too. I missed it, so I apologize. I think the question was just about the significance. I know Ra talks about the fixed stars and the significance as a scientific star, but yeah, I think really the answers here are in the Rave Cosmology materials, which just a funny point about the defined ego, for anyone with defined ego out there. Ra waited, 15 years to do Rave Cosmology because he did not have the ego energy to do it. And he knew it was 90 weeks. It took him 90 weeks to get the information out. So, over 2 years.
Yeah.
And, or about 2 years, sorry, just under 2 years. Because it would be 104 weeks in 2 years. And so, he waited and waited and waited and wanted to do it for so long. And so people were talking about manifestors and you guys don't have to wait, you're so lucky. If you gotta wait for the energy. I mean, he had the ego energy, he had to wait because he did not want to commit his energy and then not be able to follow up on it. He didn't want to, he wanted to stand by his word and promise to complete this 90-week class. And it took
he was
him,
the only one who could.
Yeah.
So.
And it took him so many years to actually have the energy to undertake that. So just, for people who think manifestors, I mean, you're a manifestor, there's a lot of waiting. There's a lot of waiting no matter who you are. Oh, as an emotional manifestor, yeah, absolutely.
That's where all of my energy goes. Is to patience.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've covered 63 pretty well. Moto Garden. Hey, Denny. Iluyue. We have Modern Cosmic Woman, and we just had Jupiter Kazemi too. So many insights in the midst of the gate of doubt was in sight. It was intense.
What is Kazemi?
Is it close to the sun? Right? Is that? Can you answer that one, Modern Cosmic
I've
Woman?
heard somebody else.
What
talk
is
about
Kazemi?
this.
I thought it was like combust. I thought it was close to the sun. I don't know. Maybe C is going to look it up.
Oh, also,
Midtown Life, welcome.
But the bane of the boardroom is what I call the 60s
Oh,
and
yeah.
64s, but 60, both of them, but so
Hi, Lori.
cross-consciousness, anything
Oh,
I have
Higa
across.
says yes.
Somebody with that I talked about bane of boardroom because it wants
Manifestor, you are a manifester. That's right. Woo! We got Lori. Right?
Yeah, when
Yeah.
when I saw that, I just
Thanks for that
asked the
sombrero.
person,
I got a lot of good
excuse
use
me,
out of it.
Yeah.
One more question.
It took
17 minutes between
Oh.
the planet and the sun.
Well, and it says Kazemi means exact conjunction.
Yeah.
Randy, Wisdom
As
Cooper.
close
Hi,
as it
Randy.
comes.
Hey, good to see you.
Yeah.
Easy says, love her cards. About your cards. Look at
Oh,
that.
thank you.
Defined egos like to hear that. That's a good thing for a defined ego here.
I'm awaiting
You know,
your
I had
deck.
multiple people message me about like, oh, they're so great. I wanted to make sure your defined ego was massaged.
Oh.
The new me. How is your ego defined? Which channel?
2644.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's just something that I noticed was, it really does make a difference. And for us undefined egos, I think a lot of us, when we get into human design, we're so afraid and we almost like foreclose on the ego. It's so much easier. Like I was saying earlier, Cone Hillowert, the projector, who also does human design readings, he doesn't charge any money. It's by donation. And I said, that's cheating. You got to charge money because that's how it was kind of a joke, but it's like, with us undefined egos, it can be really hard to value ourselves. And so a lot of times it's easier to just foreclose and say, I'm just not going to charge anything. Just pay what you want. Or just to foreclose and say, I'm not going to listen to anything, whether good or bad. I'm not going to take in any feedback. I'm not going to read when anybody comments. I don't want to know. And what I'm saying is that's okay when you're first getting into human design and when you really need to unplug from all that. But again, like we're talking about day world, night world, twilight, there's different phases. There's different times in your life. And you're going to need to come back to that.
And I have a thought about when there's people who are purely like anti-capitalist, anti-establishment. I'm just like, is that just because having an open ego makes it so uncomfortable for you?
Yeah,
to, like,
exactly.
actually
It's
deal
so
with the
hard to have to
value
make money and
evaluating others.
Mm.
Because like, how can we evaluate the needs of not the needs, but like evaluate what other people bring without feeling that same sadness of like, I just evaluated as less worthy than this person because this person has something I value more.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're open ego, we can feel that sort of
the discomfort and the sadness and
And I'm glad I'm a fourth line with an open ego because there's part of me that's just like, no, you're more valuable to me. Sorry, you're great. I'm sure you're wonderful, but you're just not for me. You're for me.
Yeah. But it's hard to do that, and we've talked about that, and I know you charge, and I charge, and I think it's great. I mean, it's like if there's no. So here's another little. Maybe this is too obscure of a side point, but Jenny and I were actually reading one of my favorite philosophy texts the other day. Yes, this is what we do for fun in our free time is read obscure philosophy texts. It's called Introduction to Metaphysics by Henri Bergson. It was written in 1903, and I've always thought of Bergson. Yeah, you know it. C is nodding, and I've always thought of Bergson as a real forerunner for human design. Contemporary of Jung.
He's a reflector, right?
Right, that's right. We couldn't figure it out the other day, but you're right. Bergson's reflector. So interesting. And in any case, what I was getting from Bergson's talk, I mean, there's so many amazing gems in there.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things is that it's about the asymmetry of reverse engineering. He was basically saying you can understand something and get the essence of it, and then you can make up a million examples to describe it. But you can take those million examples, and unless someone is able to then jump from that to the thing, they're not going to be able to grasp it. And it takes their own act. In fact, what we're trying to do is facilitate attitudes that are cultivating the possibility of. In fact, he had a beautiful thing. He said philosophy, or maybe he's talking about metaphysics. He said metaphysics is the search for a unique intuition. The search for a unique intuition. We've all had intuitions that are the same as everybody else's intuitions, and we've all heard all of them. But where's the new intuition? Where's the unique intuition? And it's so beautiful. But I was just thinking about that just in terms of like, we, in human design, we can sound so hypocritical to somebody who's critical of human design because they might catch us talking out of both sides of our mouth, but it actually, you can get it once you get it. I hate to say that, but it's kind of like once you know what it's like to have an undefined ego and to go through all of the emotional turmoil of the undefined ego, you can understand when someone goes, I'm just never going to charge money. I'm just going to live free.
Yeah.
But then once you've gotten to that point, you can also understand how someone can go, I'm going to use my undefined ego and I'm going to learn. I'm just going to learn. I mean, we start as a fool and we can end, actually having learned something. Maybe we actually learn something in this life. Maybe we don't make the same mistake again, And so it's just interesting how it's really hard to make a definite, this is the way to do it and that's the way to do that. And, that's why, who am I to say it's not correct for Kohn to, I'm making fun of it only because I see how delightful it sounds to not have to deal with money. It sounds amazing. It sounds like heaven on earth. It sounds like Eden. I never want to touch money ever again. I never want to think about money
It's just
ever
the way
again.
you said it. You said, hey, that's cheating.
Yeah, that's cheating! You mean you can just do that without money? You can just live this life without the need for the exchange of finance? I mean, because, I mean, it's not easy being an undefined ego and living in a world where you have to make money and you have to work with people and you have all of this stuff. It's just, it can be very difficult. So
Yeah, it's like having the question of, if I didn't have to work for money, what would I be doing? And I think that's a very basic question on some degree. But for an open ego, sometimes I'm like, it makes you really start thinking, how many things am I doing just to get my little pat on the head, just to get my little affirmation?
Well, just to get the pat on the head.
And then there's something real about that too. It's not to discount it either.
Well, yeah, because I guess here's kind of where I'll go with it. Is I'll just say it's absolutely necessary if you have an undefined ego when you're entering into the human design experiment to stop looking for the pat on the head. It's also necessary to realize there's another version of that. There's the absolute foreclosure of ego things, where people have basically decided at an early age, I'm just not going to deal with that world. I'm just not even going to go into that world. That world is a black box to me. That world is, and that's equally devastating because it's almost like you never really get a chance to look in the cellar, then you flash the light on and you go, oh my God, geez, I really have been not valuing myself. I really have. So it's just an interesting thing. Having undefined ego, I would actually encourage undefined ego people to begin to engage with the uncomfortable stuff, like money, like self-worth, like self-esteem. And then here's the next part of it that's even more complex. So Jenny has defined ego, so I get to see what a healthy defined ego looks like. And I know other people with healthy defined ego who are living their design. I get to see it. It's very reasonable, and it's not blowing things out of proportion. It's not easily threatened, but it also does need a bit of coaxing and massaging, and it does actually value others' feedback. And so it's funny, so many undefined ego people say, well, I don't read the compliments because I don't want it to get to my head. I don't read the detractors because they don't really know anybody. Well, you're not really valuing them then, are you? How much do you value the people who value you enough to spend hours of their life listening to you?
And I think there's just a shadow that they're holding on. It's just gone into the shadow. It's just gone into that they don't actually realize how much they really want.
Yeah, they're craving it, but they'd rather not even look at it because they're too afraid or this or that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is just that, we don't know anything when we start with undefined ego. We have to learn. So I went through a huge deconditioning where I was saying sorry way too much, and I was showing my gratitude and thanks way too much, and I was showing, and so on. And it was fake, and because it wasn't the real deal, because I didn't even know what the real deal was. Now I've gone through years and years of learning, first of all, the foreclosure of, I'll just never say sorry. I'll just never say thanks. I'll just never, do anything to do with the
I have
ego.
a really good trick for people who say sorry too much. Say, it's all right.
It's all right. It's all right.
It's all
It's
right.
all right.
People will hear sorry, but you'll be saying it's all right.
It's all right.
You're fine. You are fine. It's all
Life
right.
hacks with C. That's a good life hack there. So wait a minute. All those times you were no, wait a minute. But it's like you go through the period where you got to learn to not constantly try to signify how good you are in order to get the pat on the head. But then there's a period of time where learning, wow, I actually didn't really know what it meant to be reasonable. I thought I was reasonable, but I've actually been unreasonable. It's actually unreasonable to refuse to pay anything for myself because I just don't know if it will have value in the future. It's actually unreasonable to refuse to acknowledge any compliment I get because it could be suspect. It's unreasonable to refuse to listen to any criticism because they might not, So we kind of start to like sample all the different egos out there and go, well, this ego is reasonable, this one isn't. Well, this ego is trustworthy, this one isn't. Well, their heart's in it, their heart isn't. They have the discipline, they don't. They have the stamina, they don't. And so on, all down the line for all the ego stuff. So, all right. Do you think money will fade away with 2027? From the Garden Prophet.
Oh, a friend of mine just wrote a great essay on the 54, and I only read part of it, but there was an interesting thing pointed out, something about the invention of crypto right on the 54.5.
The 54.5. I did a reading for someone with the 54.5 today. That's
So
great.
the key of the new cycle, right?
Well,
One of the keys. Of the new cycle,
yeah.
The key to getting 13, something like that.
Yeah, we're going to understand. Exactly. Very good. Very astute, Mike. Correctly. Yeah, it is moving from 61 to 54, which in human speak means we're going from collectively understanding our history in terms of basically the secret knowledge, the inner knowledge, and so on of inner truth of the line what is
Over.
to
Throw
instead
your cultural
Stop trying to
shout.
make inner truth
Yeah.
happen.
get rid of all your exactly. And then we're moving on to an understanding of history in terms of ambition and the
stonks.
the unknown who becomes the 54 who becomes the 45, the nobody who becomes the so that's going to be interesting. Will money fade away? I don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting to see when money was developed too and how that came about.
Well, thinking about, I'm curious about your ideas around the 2027 mutation too, but thinking about cultural capital becoming something that's like, that is going to be it already is a new entire industry. Like it's a whole new set of, like, we are valuing people based on their identities and their cultural capital, like what they provide to the cultural material in which we define ourselves, right? So like, there's going to be more and more people who are not working in the service industry. We're out of the industrial industry, we're in the service industrial industry, service industry, and now we're moving to like a cultural industry in which shared ideas, identity, interiority is going to be like the most. That's the thing where we put value.
And it's an interesting point that you
And
can see.
it's an individuated society. So
No, I see it, and you can tell the good or the bad version of the story, and it really depends how far down the fractal line you want to go, because you're absolutely right that even since, if we just take it to a macro level, I kind of started on this last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, I started talking about how, we are all here to make money through electricity. And I talked about how there's so much of a fear of using too much electricity because of destroying the Earth, but if you believe the voice that said the Earth's going to be destroyed in 1,400 years anyway, that greatly shortens the time frame we have to maintain the world's electricity supply. So, if you're trying to maintain it indefinitely, that's one thing. If you're trying to make it 1,400 years, not that bad. And if that's really our lifespan as humans until all of humanity is wiped out,
What do you mean electricity supply?
well, our supply of...
We orbit around the giant nuclear reactor.
Well, okay, yeah, so we can use solar system and so on. But I'm just saying that there's so much around keep your lights turned off and don't use too much electricity and the fear of using too much electricity. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's a different perspective if you realize we just have to make it 1,400 years, not 14 million years or whatever. It's not, we don't have to make it forever. We just have to make it for a while. And so then you start to realize, okay, so we are just burning electricity. It's very much like Bataille. Any fans of Bataille out there? Okay, he was very much all about once you get to surplus, you just start destroying the surplus, and you're either going to do it through war or you're going to do it through more intentional things. But either way, the surplus is going to be destroyed. But anyway, so we're in this state where we have all this energy, all this electricity, and this is really, I guess what I'm saying is, you can see it all the way down the line of, all the way from, we could call the exalted use of the electricity to help wake up the world, to the, sort of just YouTube sensation who just, there's a guy who's making all this money because he makes really elaborate mouse traps and just shows, mouse murder videos all day long, and people pay for that. So you can do whatever you want. There's the exalted form and there's the mouse guy, but either way, they're kind of different levels of the same fractal line. And so I'm totally with you that there are sort of pop accessible versions of all these narratives. Rianne Eisler, Chalice and the Blade is a version of this. I know you really like the book, the Alphabet versus the Goddess is another version of the narrative. These are pop culture versions of the same narrative that human design gives us, which is the elimination of the double yang and the move towards cooperation, the exaltation of the projector to help coordinate people, and the right variable to be receptive and
The
to be
future is female.
yeah, exactly. The future as female is an example of the same message human design gives. It's just, 20 steps removed. And so you can kind of, like any of these, I mean, to bring it back to Bergson, I know it's kind of an obscure reference, but I would highly recommend, it's totally free, it's public domain. Read Bergson's Introduction to Metaphysics. We got halfway through. In like 45 minutes. It's not a long book. You can read it in an hour and a half. And it's something like, 50 pages. And it's just an incredible, incredible book. And he also, he gives his own version of basically how there is a living, vital essence, which then you can kind of understand. But then once you've understood it, it creates all of these artifacts. And then people encounter the artifact and think the artifact is the real thing. And they spend their entire life with the artifact never getting...
Well, this is a question, so I think a lot here about just ontology as a whole, I'll come back to that, but this is where I think mutative folks who are identifying those truths of some capacity and sharing it in some way, and then when people receive those mutative understandings and they totally obscure them, or they don't, and it turns into pop, or it's not held, or it's it's kind of I think about live, love, laugh. At some point, that was a mutative truth that somebody brought.
Yeah, it was really profound.
And it was holy shit, that's it, people. 61 coming through inner truth. Live, love, laugh.
That's it. Yeah.
And then now it's decorated on Chinese. It's all this stuff, and that's where that disconnect between the mutative ontology of it. It's going towards a deeper understanding of consciousness or being human, or what is the ontology, or is it just all? Anyway, but yeah, I kind of get caught in that question because I feel that as a deeply mutated person, Enneagram 4 on that too, where I'm when I say things or I'm trying to bring things through, there's always a constant fear. I had to get over the fear of being misunderstood or jargonized or somehow...
Well, you've talked about being tokenized as a projector, of being the token, look, I got a projector. Look at all my generator friends. Check out my projector. It's not. Yeah. It's kind of.
But yeah.
Look how silly they are and all this. This is not a good feeling. It's not a good. Well, and as far as ontology, I won't go so deep into it because I don't know if people are that interested. But so there is a really nice point that Bergson made where he said, you basically have the rationalists, mostly he was talking German, Kant and people who are basically saying you don't need any empirical evidence, you just need rational thought. As long as it's logically sound, you're good. Then you have all the analytic people, and they're all saying, they're the empiricists, and they're saying all it has to be is proven through empirical fact, and we can demonstrate it. And he says that, and I can't do any justice to the way he puts it, but he says that basically what both of them are doing is they're in the system of measurement. And they're in a system of measurement whereby they think the measurement is real. It's kind of like arguing over what a word really means. Instead of arguing over what it really means, why don't you ask, what do you mean by that? Because it's the same thing. As soon as you go beyond, basically what he says is they think that they're attacking, you can tell them a statement and they'll think that they're attacking it, but actually they're attacking its inability to be measured. And they're confusing its inability to be measured on the one hand. On the other, the rational thought, they're attacking its inability to be rationalized. And so they're like, I can't rationalize this, therefore it's wrong. I can't prove this empirically, therefore it's wrong. Each one is only really proving that it's not empirical and it's not rational. Yeah. But there is something beyond the empirical and beyond the rational, or between. Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to say it. There is something that is neither and both, and it can be empirically validated. Definitely check out Bergson's book. He does even say at one point, and those who call themselves empiricists really shouldn't, because the only true empiricism is the metaphysics of the search for the unique intuition. So this is very much like what I say when I say we're in metaphysical research programs. Human design's a metaphysical research program. It is empirical. You're looking for evidence. You're seeing, you're examining the evidence, but it's not empirical in the double-blind scientific sense.
Totally.
So.
What I really liked with reading that too was it, talked about how the essence of something is really indescribable. Once you start putting words to it, it moves on to be something else. like you're describing a feeling, like that feeling is a feeling, and you start, trying to explain what it is, and then it changes.
You code it. You put it in a linguistic bucket.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the moment that the mind enters into it, well, and the moment the mind enters into it, the mind not only has the current experience, but it has the weight of memory added to that current experience. And that's why even experiencing the same sensation twice is different, because the first one is added to the memory of the previous sensation. There's questions on this one. See, I don't know if you're interested in maybe calling out a few questions. and then we can
Wasn't
start.
ding or something.
Yeah, I know. Well, it would be dinging all day. We got a lot of questions, so.
What time is it? How long
We're about 2 hours, so we're about to wrap up. And we have a question from Katerina Kus. Does every country have its own design? Is that,
Oh no, but I'll.
I'm not sure what that question was, Katerina. Sorry, I started reading it, but are you saying it does have its own
Also, this is
disdain?
bringing a lot of logic
Not
into
quite sure.
everything, so and I
A
will-
Gemini story was laughing at Live, Love, Laugh.
My signal doesn't know when to stop.
Exactly.
Well, we're wrapping up. Crypto is the future. Lori, get it? Yeah. Crypto is the future.
Jen just says there's also something to consider the conditioning of the defined ego living in the predominantly undefined ego world, and not self trying to lessen its impact on them.
Oh, that's
Oh,
interesting.
yeah, being like a bull in a china shop a little bit. The
Yeah.
defined egos going around. And I think manifestors can feel this way too.
I've noticed that we started that conversation with evaluate and valuable, and then we moved on to reasonability. And I think reasonability is maybe the deeper, subtler part of what the heart could look like post 2027. That the value stuff might fade away as we no longer have the 3740 constantly as a background frequency,
Yeah.
but still we're measuring a sort of reasonableness.
Well, I know you've talked a lot about how the solar plexus awareness will change too. So that's an interesting side of it as well. Oh, design. Does every country have its own design? Okay, that's the question. I mean, you can do charts. There's a term Mike coined, which is mundane human design, like mundane astrology. No one has said it before. I looked it up. It's a new term, okay? Mundane human
A
design.
little bit of third line phase left in
A
there.
little bit of third line building the Maya right there. There's a sixth line. One last hit before the roof. And so Mike apparently founded the field of mundane human design. He does it quite a bit, and you send me. There's actually a really amazing group of like underground Redditors, I think, and Discord people that you're kind of tapped into.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, they
There's all
are.
kinds of mutative currents.
They are, and they're very underground, and so bring them all out. I hope if you're one of Mike's mutants, come out in August to the Human Design, the High Desert Human Design
We're
Festival.
gonna make you like
Yeah, we're gonna
t-shirt.
make a shirt that says Mike's Mutants. And if you know Mike through Discord, and if you come here in August, we'll give you a Mike's Mutants shirt.
And we're gonna play kickball.
Also, I was corrected. It's not live, laugh, love. It's live, love, laugh.
Oh, okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah, well, one's more important than the others. First, you got to be alive. If you're not alive, what's the point? And then, if you don't love things, then you can laugh about it. So, Brandy,
Human design
certainly a bull in a china shop. Yeah. The biggest relearning came around my fully defined ego and not making myself smaller to be digestible. Yeah, that's a really good point. We just had America's Pluto return. Yes, modern cosmic women, and that's been talked about a lot in some of the online human design groups. I know they're talking about human design catalyst. And that would be a great example of mundane human design. How do you do mundane for Seven Center? Well, I mean, I don't do that. I mean, you're saying like for older, like for Rome, say, like take the building of Rome back in the 7th century time.
Don't do it.
Yeah, I mean,
Just don't do it.
at the same time, you can look at what gates are active. You don't necessarily have to put them in the centers. So I would say you just do it with the mandala minus the body graph. But mundane, just for those who don't know, that's a special term in astrology. Mundane astrology means specifically politics, world events, world history. It does not mean individual charts. Mundane is used for world events. Asalatu, and Human Design Now joined. Hello. Jen Zarda points out, in Russia having its Chiron return and Ukraine its Saturn return. Okay, interesting. I wasn't familiar with those. The United States just had its Pluto return. Brianna Webb. Yes, absolutely. Garden Prophet reminds me of Schrodinger's box.
I know, this is really loud.
No, it's fun. This is very.
I need to get a bunch of stands.
Well, you know what we're gonna do next time is it's gonna be like we're just gonna get a bunch of screams and we'll be set up. So maybe we'll do something a little different next time. We'll see. We can get some. Lunar Seasons has a question. Okay, well we'll do this. We're about to wrap up. Oh, Projector Emily was saying I tried to do the U.S., but we were a projector pre-1776. Well, yeah, I wouldn't look as much at the actual body graph. I would just look at the positions on the wheel and what you can discern from that. You know, what gate and line the sun was in, and so on, and the other planets, because that can tell you a lot.
Wasn't Pluto in 41 then in the U.S. chart?
Well, it's a Pluto return, so
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
yeah, that's
Right on.
yeah. Hence,
There you go.
Yeah, we're
So-
about to enter into it.
happy, joy, human design now. Yes, absolutely. And then Projector Emily. No, it's true. Happy, joy. This is a joyful time. We're down. We're down for the happy joy. I have the joyous. That's in my design. I have gate 58. That's like you the other day, like mine. Anyway, that was good.
Line goes up.
Mike messes with me sometimes when I'm stock trading. He'll just say like line goes up, and I'll be like, and he's like, gotcha. I'm like, okay, you're just agreeing with anything now. I also have gate 29, the gate of commitment. I just say.
Then you have the gate of yes and.
I do have the yes and yeah. Sarah Castro, thank you guys. This was a lot of fun. Thank you, a lot of fun for us. Lunar Seasons asked, do a lot of us non-manifestors, at least, that have to wait for things, can we be initiated through anything, or do we have to be initiated by a manifestor? Well, you know, I don't know if you were tuned in earlier, but we were just talking about how manifestors have to wait so much, but you definitely don't have to be initiated through a manifestor. I send a lot of newcomers in human design to John Polk, because he has the channel of initiation, and it's a projected channel, not a manifestor channel. So that should tell you something. In our era, the projectors initiate you.
I have a bonus side note for that channel, that the massaging of the heart, when you have the only individual channel to the heart, the massaging is more acoustic. It is more verbal. It's less gestures and gifts and literal massage and more voice and intuition.
That's a good point. Yeah, Mike is saying that
Directional
the
energy.
2551 is the only non-tribal gate from the ego. So he's saying if you have that channel of initiation, it is very important to tell people verbally, you know, and so on. So, Clara, thank you. Thanks for tuning in. So, all right, everyone. I think that's it. Let's do it. All right, we made it. We survived. All right. There you are. See, little. Okay. Thanks.